outstanding loan
Hola a
portfolio
todos,
of
buenos
bank-related
días.
credit,
Bueno,
also
vamos
known as
con
commercial
un
bank money,
análisis
stood at over
del
2 trillion
mercado,
pounds.
nuestros
As
análisis
recently
diarios,
as 1982,
con lo
the
que son las
ratio of notes
noticias,
and coins to bank deposits was
noticias
1 to 12.
impactantes alrededor de 2 horas.
By
Para el dólar
2010,
canadiense,
the ratio had risen to 1 to
tenemos unas noticias de
37.
impacto, unas cuantas noticias de
That
impacto
is,
para
for
el
every
dólar
pound of treasury
estadounidense.
created money,
Ya lo tenemos.
there was 37 pounds
Y
of bank created
de
money.
resto, que ya son
In the 10 years prior to the
noticias de
2007 crisis,
impacto
the
bajo
UK
al
commercial
medio
bank money supply
de
expanded
divisas que
by
nosotros
between
no operamos.
7 to 10% every
Hay
year.
veces
A growth
pero hay
rate of
necesidad de
7% is the equivalent of doubling the money supply every 10 years.
Listo. Empecemos
The
con
amount of money they're creating out of
nuestro
nothing is just
análisis.
incredible.
Todo
1.2 trillion in the last 10 years. And that money is being distributed according to the priorities of the banking sector, not the priorities of society.
y que no sea un doble techo. ¿Qué
Bank
necesitaban ver?
sector
Nuevo alto.
itself grew from 1980 $2.5 trillion
Iniciamos con la
to
ruptura
$40 trillion
del alto anterior.
by assets.
¿Ok?
In 1980, global bank assets were worth 20 times the then global economy.
Por el momento,
By 2006, they were worth
podríamos
75
decir que nos
times,
encontramos
according to the
en una
UN.
acumulación o en el momento de querer tomar
As the following
una
chart shows,
dirección.
total
¿Listo?
bank assets of UK banks as a
No
percentage of
hemos salido de
GDP
peligro.
remain relatively stable
de
at
XY.
50 to
Acá podríamos
60%
ver un
up
perfecto
to the end
movimiento
of
a
the
la baja, lo cual nos debería
1960s.
traer un retroceso al alza.
After that,
Los pares que
they
cotizan
shot
frente
up
al dólar.
dramatically.
O,
And the real
lo más
money
probable,
in the
ver
world
incremento
to
al
be
alza,
made today is not by producing anything at all.
por
It's
subidas de
simply
tasa de
by forms of speculating, basically making money from money. That's the most profitable and by
Que si
far
quieren
and
puede ir
away
unas 4 horas,
the
puede ir
biggest
mirando
form
que de ahí
of activity,
ciertos
of economic
indicadores,
activity that exists in the world today.
donde podamos tener un
Today,
movimiento. Yo prefiero esperar
banks are no longer restricted by how much they can
noticias
lend,
fundamentales,
and as
eso,
such,
digamos, que
how
no
much
tiene
new
internet.
credit they can create out of
Hablando que era
nothing.
muy importante que que
They are restricted
rompiéramos,
solely by their
rompiéramos al
own
alza.
willingness to lend.
Y se recupera en este momento, se está retesteando. Y
The issue
ahora
with
lo que
allowing
debemos
banks to
hacer
create
es
money, there's two
generar
main
un
issues.
nuevo
Firstly,
nivel
the fact that
de
they
stock.
create this money
Ya
when they
saben qué
make
pasa, este es
loans.
otro nivel
So
importante, nivel
it
importante.
guarantees that we have to borrow all our money for the economy from the banks.
XA USD sin
As
mucho
such,
movimiento, la verdad.
To have a healthy growing economy, the government needs to put in place strategies
Al
to allow for
recuperar
ever-increasing
para ver
debt.
The only way the government can create additional purchasing power is by getting itself and us
al
into
haber,
more debt.
digamos que
The
estamos
second big issue with allowing
en un
banks to
rango,
create money
este,
is that
pero
they
que
have
que
the incentive to always create more. They create more money if they issue a loan. They get the
tener una
bonuses and the
atención.
commissions and the incentives to create, to lend as much as possible.
You have to develop a
Intentamos
sales culture.
recuperar.
What did they do? They recruited an amazing guy, lovely guy, Andy Hornby, who came
No lo
from
logramos,
Asda,
y esto nos va a volver a
to turn the bank into a
los
supermarket retailing operation.
o simplemente
If you trust
podríamos
bankers to control the money supply
juntar
supply will
nuestras
just
zonas
grow and grow and grow,
de oferta.
as will the level of debt, until the point where it crashes, when some people can't repay the debt, and then they'll stop lending. You hear politicians and journalists saying, we've been living beyond our means, we've become dependent on debt, we need to rein in our spending and live within our means. It's not possible in the current system.
¿Listo?
The reason why everybody's in debt now is not because they've been recklessly
Este
borrowing.
día sigue siendo
We haven't borrowed all this money from
podríamos
an
ver
army of
una
pensioners who've been
visita
saving up their
tal vez
whole lives.
superior.
Money in the current system is debt. It's created when banks make loans. So the only way in the current system that we can have any money in the economy, the only way we can have money for business
Tenemos que
to
ver
trade
aquí en este
is
momento
if we
estamos
borrowed it
en la
all
mitad de un
from
rango,
the banks.
tenemos un DXY sin movimiento, por lo que jugaríamos
And it's the
con
very
fuego y
opposite
podríamos
of what the
ponernos
Tory
a-
party is
tal vez a-
arguing today, which
a
is that you
querer
have to create
apostar de
savings
más
before you can
sin
help
tener una
the National
dirección.
Health
Entonces, yo
Service.
pienso que mejor
And it's
vemos
because
que esas
economists
noticias
have
que impactan el
completely
dólar
confused
al
those
pricing,
things, both
entonces, pues,
in
iniciar
monetary
cada una
policy
para ver
terms,
cómo
but
afecta.
also in economic thinking, and because most people
Evaluar
still
esas zonas
harbour
donde,
the old-fashioned
si
view that
afecta
you need
de
savings
forma
before you can
positiva,
invest.
¿dónde podría ser
That
la
we
zona que
have
yo
the
puedo
mess
estar
that we're
esperando
in
en
today.
DXY, en XY?
Now, one of the reasons why we
y viceversa.
find it difficult to understand
Lo mismo,
the banking system and credit creation is that
seguimos a la
we leave
espera.
school without any money and we go and get a job working as an apprentice to a plumber. We work really hard all
Okay.
month, and at the end of the month, somebody puts money in our bank. And so for us, the logic is you work and then you get money, you get savings. In reality, you would never have
This
Un
central bank money
excelente
to the banks.
trade.
And they do this by
ejemplo, acá
creating it out of
tenemos
nothing and
Cuando
using this money to pay for bonds, to buy bonds from the
Aquí
high street
tenemos
banks. So the high street bank will
Después
come along
tenemos-
with a bond, which is, effectively government debt,
No,
and it will give it to the Bank of England, and in
Y
return the Bank of
lógicamente,
England will type some new numbers
trade
into
pueden
the
cerrar.
bank's account at the Bank of England. So effectively they're creating
Excelente
central
trade.
bank reserves out of nothing.
The Bank of England creates central bank reserves. By increasing the
Entonces, sí,
available credit in the settlement
FP
bank's account
va
with
a
the Bank of
tener
England,
ese retroceso del que estábamos
the
hablando
settlement
en
bank
nuestra
in return
previsión en
posts bonds
nuestro
or
canal.
sells assets as
Vamos a
collateral
buscarlo
for the
por acá está.
reserves. A total of 46 banks hold central reserve accounts at the Bank of England. Smaller or foreign banks hold accounts with one of these 46 banks to allow them to accept or make payments in pounds sterling. Prior to March 2009, the Bank of England would ask each of the major settlement banks how much reserve currency they needed. The settlement banks would then swap a bond for the reserve currency and agree to repurchase the bond for a specific amount at a specified future date. The settlement banks would then receive interest at base or policy rate for the central bank reserves they held. Since the crisis, settlement banks' central reserves have shot up dramatically.
Tengamos esta liquidez, estos rechazos al alza acá arriba, tenemos los 26.100.
When bank customers transfer funds from their account to another person's account, a process called intraday clearing occurs. The amount of central reserve currency Bank A has at the Bank of England is reduced by the corresponding amount that Bank B receives. This is the importance of central reserve currency to banks. Before the credit crisis, if a bank was short of central reserves at the Bank of England to meet its obligations, then the bank would have to loan reserves from other banks with interest.
Ethereum sí está un poquito más feo que lo que es Bitcoin.
If you sell something on eBay, you know that that deal's not complete until you get some money put into your account. Most people actually want 250,000 from their account at the Bank of England to the bank of the house seller, and that money will actually move across between the accounts at the Bank of England. When that money is moved across, then the banks will consider that that payment has been made, it's been settled. They don't really deal in the kind of money that we have in our accounts. They deal in this special money that can only be used at the central bank.
Que podemos estar esperando. ¿Listo? Que tengan un excelente
There are
día,
millions of
muchachos, y que
people
estén muy
across the
bien.
country